When tourists visit Savannah, one of the areas they normally hit up is River Street. The cobblestone and brick area runs along the Savannah River and is filled with shops, restaurants, and bars. But those aren't the only things inhabiting River Street. Let's talk about the spirits of the Savannah River. The following video discusses true tales of murder, suicide, and accidental death. Viewer discretion is advised. According to Visit Savannah, the River Street area is one of the most haunted areas of the city. Why is that? I have a few theories. One of my recent TikTok videos about the cobblestones on Savannah's River Street has gotten a lot of comments. These stones aren't original to Georgia. They are ballast stones used to even out the cargo in ships from destinations like Spain, Canada, France, and the British Isles. When the ships arrived in Savannah to take on new cargo, some of the ballast stones would be left behind. Eventually, they were used to pave the areas around where cargo would load and unload in the harbor, as well as construct walls and buildings. Some parapsychologists believe that certain types of stones can record strong energies released during traumatic events or heightened states of emotion. It's called the rock tape theory. River Street has certainly seen hundreds of years of heightened emotions, both good and bad. Joyous reunions of sailors with their families, the excitement of seeing a voyage beginning or ending, business owners happy to see wares finally coming in to fill their shops, and in more recent years, the thrill of a night out with friends and the awe inspired by the 4th of July or New Year's fireworks. Of course, it can't all be good. Savannah also shipped slaves in and out through the port. These people were torn from their families and homes. The fear, uncertainty, and pain they endured has without a doubt stuck around in one form or another. Of course, this wouldn't be the last time some of them saw the port. Some of the slaves were forced to work in the area known as Factor's Row. The older buildings you see along the waterfront were originally warehouses. The iron walkways that link the bluff to the buildings is called Factor's Walk. The area just beneath it is Factor's Row. This is where slaves and paid workers would labor to bring in cargo like cotton from fields to store inside the warehouses before they could be shipped out. Even after slavery ended, the cotton industry continued for years. In fact, the last cotton office on River Street didn't close until 1956. And this is after the ballast stones came to Savannah. Who knows what those stones were exposed to before? Folk tales from around America and other countries tell of spirits trapped by running water. In my time as a broadcast news journalist in Savannah, I have seen far too many tweets like this from Savannah police. This means that someone is threatening to jump from the bridge that links Savannah to Hutchinson Island on the other side of the river. Now, before we go further, I want to stress this. Suicide is not the answer or even an answer. If you're dealing with suicidal ideation, please reach out for help. This is the number for the National Suicide Hotline. Trust me, no matter how bad things look right now, the world is a much better place with you in it. The current Talmadge Bridge is about 574 feet high. Falling off of it would be the equivalent of falling the length of almost 6 football fields. That's certainly a traumatic event to deal with before you die. While I was researching the bridge for one of the virtual ghost tours that I host on Instagram and TikTok, I came across probably one of the saddest news stories I've ever read. In 1975, 2-year-old Tiffany Lowry was woken up by her mother's boyfriend, Joseph James Blake. He asked her if she wanted to, quote, stay with him forever. He then drove her to the top of the old Talmadge Bridge over the Savannah River. They knelt next to the railing to pray, and then Blake threw little Tiffany over the railing and to her death. He was caught and convicted of her murder, but you have to imagine the fear and confusion that little girl felt before she hit the water. 6 years later, the river claimed a murder suspect. Richard Albert Beam's body was found floating in the river. Police had been searching for him following the discovery of his wife's body stabbed to death in her own home. There were also deaths of several unidentified people tied to the Savannah River. Police are still trying to identify at least 2 people seen jumping or falling into the river in the 2000s. In 2005, a skull was also found on an island in the river near Fort Pulaski. The 2016 death of a Savannah firefighter shocked and saddened the community following the collapse of a boat ramp on River Street. Master firefighter Michael Curry was one of the first responders working to pull 60 people from the cold river or stuck on the collapsed ramp. That's when, according to the coroner, he suffered a dissecting aneurysm of the aorta. I know his loss was a hard one for his fellow firefighters, but he was the only one who died that day. Every person on the ramp was rescued. In 2019, a barge worker accidentally fell into the river. His body was later found near the Houlihan Bridge. In 2016, the body of a 23-year-old SCAD student was pulled from the river. Posts I found from some of her friends say, still today, they haven't been able to figure out how she ended up there, but they miss her. Now, am I saying that Savannah's River Street is haunted by any of these people? No. I can't say with certainty that the ghosts that I and other people have experienced are connected to any of the deaths in the last 40 or so years. I personally feel like most of the energy on River Street is residual. The rock tape theory and the presence of the river certainly makes me feel like the replaying of emotions or events is more likely. If you've ever seen the statue of Florence Martis, the waving girl, you may have heard that she waved to sailors from her brother's home on Elba Island along the river, with the hopes that one of the ships would be carrying her lost love. I hate to burst your romantic bubble, but there was no lost love. Florence told reporters before her death that she simply enjoyed waving to the ships because she wanted the sailors to know that someone was happy to see them. Even after her death in 1943, at the age of 74, ships reported occasionally seeing a ghostly woman waving to them on Elba Island. Now, here's where things get weird again. A few weeks ago, I was down on the river telling the story of Florence to my TikTok followers during a live virtual ghost tour. As I finished her story and began talking about the deaths connected to the Talmadge Bridge, I felt a shift in the air. It felt as if I was being watched, and not just by my followers. There was a heaviness that hadn't been there a moment earlier. I quickly wrapped up my story and left the river, but I'll admit, I was shaken. One of my TikTok followers told me she was walking on River Street near the African American monument when she felt pain in her back. When she checked it later, there was a long scratch running up that she just couldn't explain. Other friends who have worked in restaurants on River Street tell me that they've had their own paranormal experiences. The Chart House restaurant is housed inside the oldest masonry building in Savannah. In fact, it's built from the same ballast stones we discussed earlier. Now the old sugar and cotton warehouse is home to something different, and I'm not just talking about the food. Employees have complained of supplies being tossed around by an invisible force. One employee said he felt targeted by whatever entity is inside the Chart House. He wouldn't say more than that. 11 years ago, employees of a t-shirt shop on the river said they caught an orb on security footage. I'm not a specialist on orbs. I can't confirm or deny what this is, but I do think it's interesting that it ended up on the news. I'm sure Visit Savannah mentioned River Street as one of the most haunted areas of the city because tourists love our ghost stories, but I don't think they exaggerated. It's hard to dismiss the ghosts when so many people have experienced something there. So, if your next trip to downtown Savannah takes you to River Street, remember, you aren't alone. There's hundreds of years worth of happiness, fear, pleasure, and death following you. Just make sure to leave a little happiness of your own behind. Thank you for enjoying this episode of Salt Waves and Spanish Moss. If you liked what you saw, you can find more of my content in my About section. And don't forget to like and subscribe.